Yeah, so welcome everyone, and I'm hoping over the next number of weeks that we can share some beautiful time together. And we're on a precious journey of this module in particular is like the most important in some ways for all of our DB modules. And presenting the path is utterly precious and utterly inspiring. And I think it gives a great sense of confidence as well because many of us would have had spiritual backgrounds before meeting Buddha Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, but perhaps they didn't have such a clear pathway by which we can progress and have indicators of whether we're at a particular stage and what we need to do to go beyond that stage to the next level and so forth, and bring about the results that we seek. So here in this module, presenting the path, we're going to go through I'm going to try to do an anti-Virgo thing. So apologies being Virgo, but usually that's also detail oriented, and I will fail at that. I will be detail oriented sometimes. But what I like to do is more zoom back and have an overall understanding, look at the structures, the frameworks, and try to, really get a good foundation and solid structures in place, because then over the subsequent modules, as you know, we go into the details like on karma and death and impermanence and the spiritual teacher and, all of these. So to give some understanding, to get those foundations in place, I will need to give a little bit of detail about the specifics. But really, I would like this time together over these next number of weeks to really just be about having a good understanding of the structure of the Lam Rim. So the Lam Rim, we'll go into it soon, the graduated path to enlightenment, and even look in some detail at the Four Noble Truths, that as a structure, and the three principal aspects of a path, and maybe even the relationships between all three. How is the Lam Rim presenting the Four Noble Truths, the three principal aspects of the path? How do the three principal aspects of the path relate to the Four Noble Truths like this? So let's see how far we get. That's my ambition, and it may be too ambitious, but let's just see how we go. All right, so is anyone identifying as being Buddhist? Just a show of hands if anyone's sort of Buddhist inclined. So there's a number of us Buddhists here. So if it's okay with your permission, I'd like to do refuge bodhicitta prayers. And if you're not Buddhist, that's totally okay. You could just do your own private meditation on compassion or something while we're jumping to those prayers. So just find a comfortable position. If we had the leisure of more than an hour and a half together, we could go through a more extensive motivation and look at, the three principal aspects of the path, and then go for refuge. And as our understanding develops of this content, this module, then we will endeavor to do that towards the latter weeks. Okay. So right now, just knowing that, the whole purpose of refuge is for the purpose of liberation. And so we can, bring to mind the image of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. If you have a teacher like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Thubten Sop Rinpoche, seeing Shakyamuni Buddha as inseparable from the Guru. And, the beauty of this is, even if you're not good at visualizing like myself, the most important thing is to feel that you are in actuality in the presence of the Buddha, whose only wish is to help lead you and guide you to the state of enlightenment. So at least adopt the mentality of being in the presence of the Buddha. And over the subsequent modules, try to get a good understanding. I think you did that in the previous module, how to meditate a Shakyamuni Buddha meditation. So try to get a good understanding of, what Shakyamuni Buddha looks like in the various aspects as well. Also, if we had the leisure, we could do some breathing meditation. So it's probably good to start all of that before you join the very short class that we have today. So doing 9-round breathing, concentration breathing, all of that would be awesome before you click into Zoom. And so being in the presence of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, we can just reflect how, just like me, all living beings wish for happiness and freedom from any problems or suffering or difficulties. And in this way, there is no difference. We're all equally the same in this respect. Also, just like me, living beings are continually searching outside of themselves for happiness, as if it lays externally to them in objects, whether it be relationships, friends, our possessions, our reputation. And even when we do get what we wish for, we're never fully satisfied, always wanting more, or something new, something different. And so this dissatisfied mind we experience continually throughout the day, in each moment, but throughout our entire lifetime. And whatever happiness we do encounter from those external objects is only very fleeting and never fully satisfying. And this is what a non-Buddhist does. An outer being seeks happiness in external things, outer things. Whereas a Buddhist, an inner being, sees the external as merely a condition, but not producing genuine, real, lasting happiness. As we saw in module 1, happiness, a mental factor, a state of mind, is internal within our own continuum. And therefore the substantial cause can only be also internal. And so in this way, our mind is the creator of our own happiness and also the creator of our suffering. Nothing external to blame. And so it's an inner job. And we're fully qualified for this job, this inner happiness, all the way up to happiness of future lives, liberation, and consummate happiness, enlightenment. And so we can stop the cause of all our problems, our suffering, depression, anxiety, insecurities, conflicts, whatever's going on for us, any emotional disturbances. These sufferings are brought about by our karma and delusions, wrong consciousnesses, particularly ignorance. And so we can overcome all of these negative states of mind, afflicted states of mind, by producing the opposite, constructive minds, particularly wisdom, realizing emptiness, but also loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, and so forth. We also know from module 1 how the conventional nature of the mind is that which is clear and knowing, pure by nature. And the stains are merely temporary, suitable to be removed by an antidote, in other words, adventitious. We also know that the mind's impermanent, which means it is changing momentarily, dependently. And so we can develop all the appropriate causes and conditions to move our mind in the most healthy, constructive way. We also know that at an ultimate level, this mind lacks inherent existence, which means that because it is empty of being independent, unrelated, it's empty of that, which means it's the opposite. It's dependent, it's related, which means that we can introduce the appropriate causes and conditions to transform, to develop our mind, to grow the qualities that we seek. And we can do all of this in dependence on following the Buddha's path, clearly outlined in the 3 scopes. We can ripen this Buddha nature, particularly now in a precious human rebirth. But we can do all of this not merely for our own gain, our own freedom, but really recognizing at a heart level our interdependence. We are utterly reliant on others. For even our body is reliant, comes from mum and dad, sperm and egg. But every quality we develop is also in relation to others. Therefore, every happiness is in relation to others. And so we can really use our life in the most meaningful way by taking the teachings to heart, putting them into practice, and using our life to benefit others. And the best way to do that is in dependence on attaining enlightenment. And so the Buddhists amongst us, we can go for refuge to Shakyamuni Buddha, the teacher of the Dharma, and the Sangha who assists like a doctor, supreme medicine, and a nurse, so that we can, as a patient, take that medicine and be cured to achieve the freedom and happiness we seek. So if you like, sorry, you have to keep the sound off, obviously, because of the Zoom doesn't handle all the microphones on at the same time. But if you're happy to, if you'd like to join, then we can go for refuge together in English. And we usually do it 3 times. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And so we rely on Buddha Dharma Sangha that exists in another's continuum to develop that, rely on that, and develop that within our own continuum so that we can become Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so refuge is a very powerful practice of having that reliance on external to grow the internal. So it's not giving away our power or any of these sorts of things. It's using our life in the most meaningful way to develop the stages of the path. So as far as the structure, I imagine this session will only get through the life story of Shakyamuni Buddha in a brief way, but most importantly, how does it relate to us? So what we have to do at each of the stages is try to apply the teachings to our own mind. Okay, happiness being internal, we have to create them all within our mind and relate them to our own path. If time permits, I'm going to skip the four greatnesses until next week, so I don't want to overload you with theory, okay? So of the four greatnesses, the one that we'll take to heart this week and look at the rest next week will be applying the teachings, teaching them, taking them as personal advice or as personal instructions. So that's the main one that we can focus on there for this session, and we'll introduce the others next week. The way to listen to the teachings, we may not get a chance to do today, and that's okay. But just as a mental note, for instance, if being on Zoom is the easiest way to be distracted. If you are actually sitting in front of me physically, you're probably not going to be like texting or checking your phone or just seeing what's on social media. You're probably not going to do that. So on Zoom, you'll probably do it off camera like this, but I'm urging you to try to resist the temptations of being distracted and having like animals crawling all over us, as much as it's such great delight and joy. And I do wish I had a puppy in my lap right now. It is a big distraction. And there's always going to be 100 jobs for you to do when you finish Zoom. So let them remain until you finish. I'm not hoping to see someone vacuuming the floor and doing whatever else while they're in the Zoom session. So that would be an utterly wrong way to really respect and honor the teachings of the Buddha. So try to be as undistracted as possible. And what I'm going to present to you, not everyone's going to be Buddhist, and that's okay. You don't have to be Buddhist to do this course. Of course, it's presented in a Buddhist way, though, because it is presenting the path, the teachings laid out by the Buddha. So at least from your side, if I may encourage that, just be open-minded. You don't have to accept this as truth. It may not fit your disposition. It may not be of something that you want to adopt or take on board. You might just be curious, and that's okay. But you don't have to accept what I'm going to teach just because the Buddha said so. It must be true. You check up for yourselves, have an open mind and open heart. And if something doesn't fit, that's totally okay. Just put it on the shelf for later. It doesn't mean that you say, oh, what a load of rubbish, blah, 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 blah. Just, okay, not for me. I'm just going to shelve it for now. And then you never know. You may come back to it later and investigate a bit more and go, oh, maybe there is something about this that makes sense. But just treat it as a hypothesis for now. And as far as taking notes, it's a good thing. So who's doing the exams? Just a show of hands so I can see. Yeah, cool. So quite a few people. Even if those people doing the exams, wonderful, the best, perfect. When you do an exam, it's not about ego. It's not about sharing, your results and generating pride. I got this, or feeling inferior because I didn't do as well. It's a personal journey. So I call them when I've got 38 students doing the exams with me here at Chenrezig Institute. And I call it a personal reflection exercise. It's an exam, and they know it's an exam. But it just means we don't build up all that big hoo-ha about, oh, it's an exam and getting all stressed and, all this sort of stuff. Just treating it like a personal reflection exercise and just writing down, the exam answers that you're trying to come up with is a learning tool. If you have studied for the exam, you have met the requirement of the exam, in my opinion, not in the opinion of the DB assessment, of course, you'll need to pass it. But, the purpose of an exam is to study. And if you do the exams, you study differently. And that's the key. You study differently. So it goes in at a deeper level. And so take some notes while you're going through. Take some screenshots if you're interested. That should be easy to do. It's a bit hard to share the slideshow. I will put some of them in the chat this session, but after that you're on your own. So just take some screenshots and take some notes, because that way, when you're engaged in the writing down of things and doing screenshots and going back to your notes later, you're more engaged in your learning. So you're going to learn differently as well. So that's probably enough for the way to listen for now. Undistracted, open-minded, treating it as a hypothesis and taking notes, so that you can retain what we're learning. We might have a look a little bit at Lama Atisha, his life story in brief. And then I want to get to at least the links of how the graduated path to enlightenment, the various topics link. You'll see that a gradual progression. And so I'd like to focus on some of that. And then over the subsequent weeks, as you know, we'll go back to some of these topics and we'll look in more detail at the 3 scopes. The 4 truths of a noble being is a better translation instead of 4 noble truths. And the 3 principal aspects of the path. And maybe we'll even have a look at the different wisdoms and methods throughout. All right. Then we'll look at how we can use the 3 principal aspects in our daily life, and whether we do that in this session or whether it becomes part of our retreat day. It'd be good to not only have those meditations, but to see how we can apply it even when we go shopping and these sort of basic routine things we do, work and whatever else. And then for the retreat, we'll look at the foundation of all good qualities and meditate on that, stopping at each particular verse to do particular meditations. And so it's like a glance meditation, but then we'll incorporate the analytical side as well. And of course, it will precede the starting with some concentration meditation, placement meditation, and then coming down at certain points, we'll do the concentration meditation as well. So you'll see how all of the topics you've done so far in DB are bringing you along for this journey. So we don't just do a topic and then go done and dusted, finish that, leave it now, and let's move on. So that's not how we're going to proceed. Everything that we've done previously is beneficial for where we are now and where we're going. Does that make a little bit of sense? Does that seem okay for everyone? Okay, so that's the plan. And so let's have a look at the Buddha's life story then. Okay, so I'm only going to do this briefly because you could probably find on YouTube some really cool stories about the Buddha's life story and all that sort of stuff. And they could really do it great justice with all the graphics and whatever else that they provide. So bearing that in mind, I'll just go through it briefly. So Shakyamuni Buddha, so he was born basically 2,600 years ago into a royal family of King Shuddhadana and Queen Maya, which is also Maya Devi is also another name known for the Buddha's mother. And they were like part of the Shakya clan. So it's a royal family. So this is a beautiful picture here of the mother leaning onto one of these trees here and giving birth to the Buddha. And you'll see he takes 7 steps here, and apparently lotuses appear and all of this sort of stuff. Very auspicious occasions are occurring before he's actually taken birth and then post-birth. So even while in the womb, the mother had very auspicious dreams about the child that was in her womb, and that was, the capabilities of him. And it was obviously indicating a very special, birth was about to take place. And surprisingly, I'm not a mother to a human. I was a mother to dogs, but not a mother to humans. So I can't imagine what birth is like, except excruciating, but full of joy and love. And oh my gosh, what a conflict of emotions. But, the actual birth was quite painless here. So that is often illustrated when these holy beings are born as well. So yeah, one of the auspicious dreams she had, for instance, of giving birth to this special person like the Buddha to become, was something where there was this like white elephant. So an elephant's very symbolic in Buddhism, particularly in the great vehicle, the Mahayana vehicle. And this white elephant with 6 tusks entered into her right side. And, these are just some of the indications of powerful dreams. So she was returning home to her family to actually give birth, and that's when she stopped at Lumbini. Maybe some of you have been to Lumbini, and Lumbini is now basically I think you could say the border of Nepal and India. It's certainly in Nepal. So she gave birth in Lumbini, Western Nepal there, and yeah, and so that's something very, very precious. Now, after his birth, as I said, Prince, remember, Siddhartha, Gautama, took 7 steps in each direction, and these lotus flowers sprung up. So whether that's a literal story or whether just, of great significance, I think it's important to recognize that, as we hear the teachings, they're for a specific purpose, and it doesn't mean that we have to take every single thing so literally. But who knows? Who knows what was possible? A great holy being coming to this world system is, incredible, inconceivable. So sadly, so anyway, a Brahmin prophet came and visited the king and mentioned to the king that your child has the destiny to either come up to become a great ruler, a king of the world, or a great spiritual teacher. So if you were the king, naturally for your child, you want them to be your successor and to only follow in those footsteps of the king and to be such a great ruler and leader. And so the king did everything he could to protect his child from anything that would lead to a spiritual journey. So, living in a life of lavish goods and never seeing any difficulties or challenges or suffering and having everything just so beautiful and lavish, trying to, sensory overload of all the pleasures and delights. A week after the Buddha's birth is when his mother, Mayor David, died, and it was actually his maternal aunt. So Mahaprajapati Gautami, she became the stepmother of the child, and she, interestingly, was the first ordained nun. That happened much later, once the king had died, that she would become the first ordained nun. So that's pretty amazing. All right, so you can see the type of family he's born into here as we proceed as well. So as I indicated, he was confined to the palace and shielded from anything that looks like suffering, and just lived this life of luxury, and every desire was fulfilled. He excelled in whatever he accomplished, whether it be, the arts or sports and things like this. Naturally extremely handsome. So this is all coming out of qualities of having practiced past patience and these sorts of things, So having those internal qualities producing that external appearance for him. Eventually he married Yashodhara and had a son, Rahula. And interestingly, both his wife and son became ordained. So very spiritual family was in the making here. Now, from a Mahayana perspective, the Buddha didn't attain enlightenment newly in this last life that he had, but was already previously enlightened. And all of this was just a display or a show or a manifestation for us, for you, for me, to show us how to actually become enlightened. So that's from that perspective, that he was already enlightened and he just returned to show the way to become enlightened for our benefit. So we can think that these teachings are for our benefit, although we weren't around 2,600 years ago in this very body that we have today. Nevertheless, the teachings remain. They're still in a state of thriving. And so we can think that when we read any book, anything of the Dharma, we can think that it's being taught exactly to us for our benefit. And so that can be one way of really becoming close. So we've got a Nalanda Master's garden here just outside where I am in the Tara room at the moment. And, the Nalanda Masters, I call them all my friends. So when I read about Chandrakirti, Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, all of these amazing beings, Lamritisha, I feel that sense of closeness to them. Having studied Dhammakirti, Dignaga, and all the rest, I feel that sense of closeness. And so when I read their holy, teachings, I try to take it as personally applying to me, as if they're teaching me directly, that they've created this for my benefit. So in that way, we could maybe, if it suits your mind as well, maybe you could think of it in those ways. It certainly helped me to develop that closeness. So then one day, I guess, having enough of all these sensory pleasures and wondering what lays beyond the confines of the palace, the prince did sneak out, and he came across 4 things that he'd never seen before. One of them being a sick person. And so he asked his attendants, what's this? And, his attendants told him that, this is a sick person. And at some point, everybody will get sick. And, then he's come across this old person and he's like, what's this? And, the attendants replied, it's an old person. And if you live long enough, you'll eventually become old as everybody else does. And so then he saw a dead person being carried through the streets. And he was like, what's going on here? And then once again, he was told the same sort of story, that death comes to all of us, oneself included, but all your loved ones, everybody will have to die at some point. And so this is, incredibly shocking to the prince who's only ever seen everything beautiful and young and, yeah, like that. So then he's come across this one other site, this wandering ascetic, a holy seeker who's, very peaceful, very calm. And once again, he's wondering, what's he looking for? What's it all about? What's he doing? And what's he learning? All of these sorts of questions came up. And so, this has all taken the prince to great impact and by surprise and never having seen these sort of things before. And so when he's returned to the palace and he's thinking about all of these things that he's seen, he can no longer bear the fact that his loved ones are going to undergo these very sufferings of sickness, old age, and death. And so this was pivotal in him making the decision that he would leave and try to understand the truth of life, the reality, and try to find a solution to be able to permanently, forever overcome this suffering of sickness, old age, and death, which will happen to not only himself, but loved ones and all living beings. And so, but with that in mind, he left the palace to find the answers to life's problems. So he secretly did this one night and renouncing his palace life for the life of a wandering ascetic. And along the way, he met many teachers. And interestingly, one of the sutras I read recently, maybe just last year sometime, you remember all of this is a display of how to achieve enlightenment. And these teachers that he met was very deliberate because they were seekers themselves of the truth. And so if he made that strong karmic connection with them, then when he comes to showing the aspect of enlightenment and teaching the noble path, then these beings that he's met along the way will be most likely the first influenced seekers of truth themselves. And so he's met with these many different spiritual teachers, and before long, he's gone beyond what they can teach him anymore. He's found limitations to what they were teaching, and so had to then set out to find new teachers and so forth. And all of it, like I was saying, as a display, having already previously enlightened. Further on his journey, he met with 5 fellow seekers and practiced really strict asceticism, where basically they were starving themselves, living on like a grain of rice a day or something, like that, really forsaking the needs of the body, thinking that it was going to be a path to develop the mind, and a very high states of meditative absorption, which their hope would be that it would bring freedom from suffering. So, that's not going to be the case with those high-level concentrations. At the most, you'll get to the formless realm, and you won't have suffering of pain. And you won't even have the contaminated happiness, the suffering of change. But you will still have this pervasive suffering of conditionality, where we have this body and mind, the five aggregates, under the control of karma and afflictions. And so we'll never be able to overcome that level of suffering just with these absorptions or high levels of concentration. And so after 6 years, he was too weak to meditate anymore. So this image of the Buddha we would have seen many times before, and it's a really, really, really powerful teaching, because it's from this teaching that the Buddha taught the middle way. So starving himself and depriving the body, thinking it's going to bring a heightened concentration, the Buddha came to realize that this isn't actually the way. And one of the images that prompted him in this, so the sutras go, talks about how there was this musician that it was tuning a stringed instrument, and on a boat or something going down the Naranja River, and he's trying to tune this instrument. And you know how if you wind it too tight, the sound's not pleasant, and if it's wound too loose, the sound's not pleasant. And so to have the sound played perfectly, you need that middle way, not too tight, not too loose. And so in the same way, the Buddha saw this and applied it to his own mind, to the teachings, and saw that he himself must perfectly abide in the middle way, not too indulgent and not with extreme austerities, but finding that sweet spot. So neither path of being too indulgent or too neglectful will lead to end suffering. So hence why the middle way is so important. And so at this point, Sujata has appeared and offers Gautama a tasty rice and milk porridge near Bodh Gaya. If you've been there, you can go to this place as a pilgrimage, and it's not far from the Bodh Gaya Stupa. Really just super close, maybe even half an hour away. So this tasty rice and milk porridge is what's energized the Buddha's body, energized his practice to be able to meditate, and renewed his determination to achieve enlightenment. And so with that renewed determination, he's journeyed, as I said, not far away, to Bodh Gaya there. As all the Buddhas of this fortunate eon, there's 1,000 Buddhas that will come in this fortunate eon. Shakyamuni Buddha is the 4th, Maitreya the 5th of 1,000. They will all sit under the Bodhi tree at Bodh Gaya and achieve enlightenment on that seat. So Bodh Gaya is like translated as a place of enlightenment. So it's now called the Bodhi tree because of that, the Sanskrit term being, Bodhi for enlightenment. So what else? At the time of becoming a Buddha, so now no longer Prince Siddhartha, now Shakyamuni Buddha, he's fully awakened, has seen the truth of reality, and used that truth, that powerful antidote, to remove all obscurations, all karma and afflictions, and even the imprints of afflictions, afflictive obscurations, knowledge obscurations. And in developing those powerful antidotes, particularly of wisdom, realizing emptiness, and bodhicitta, destroyed all the obscurations, and at the same time grown all the realizations of the path to enlightenment. So once he's seen all of this and attained this enlightened state, he didn't actually teach for about 7 weeks, about 49 days. And it wasn't until he was requested again and again and again to actually teach. And then, when he's thinking about who he's going to teach, well, who are the most suitable for such a teaching? If you can imagine, you've seen the truth of reality, the lack of inherent existence, for instance, that no object, no thing, not myself, my aggregates, nothing exists independently in and of itself, as if it's like substantially existent, objectively existent. And this is how everything appears to us. So who would be ripe for such a teaching, right? So that's when he goes back to these 5 ascetics that he spent all this time with. But you remember, they were the ascetics living off a grain of rice. So when the Buddha is now having eaten this porridge and, rice porridge and so forth, they've now shunned the Buddha, right? Because he's weak. He's actually collapsed into indulging. And so when he's walked there to Sarnath to find them, they haven't been too impressed. And you can imagine like how we would behave. It's like, you know, don't want to pay attention to the Buddha. But something is so captivating in his radiance, in his qualities. And so on closer inspection, then that they too generate this amazing respect and devotion and faith and want to know what he's learned, because they can clearly see that something is very different and working well. And so they want that. And so this was when at Sarnath, at Deer Park, the Buddha gave the first teaching on the Four Noble Truths. And I hope to, maybe in session 3 or something like that, go into some detail on the Four Noble Truths. It's a very precious teaching and very relevant. And I'd like to apply the reasons and logic to it so that we can see how we can actually overcome the cause of our suffering, karma and afflictions, true origins, and how we can reverse our cyclic existence by developing true paths, which will lead to true cessation, liberation. So it's very precious topic. So the Buddha taught for nearly 50 years, some 84,000 teachings, and basically, with the Four Noble Truths, just in essence, the Buddha said suffering should be known. So if we think about it, like when we go to a doctor, we wouldn't go to a doctor for any other reason other than if we were suffering, right? So first we have to know our own suffering. Why? Because then we'll generate the wish that we want to be free of it. If you're not suffering, you're not going to go to a doctor seeking a cure to be free. So the very first thing is we have to know suffering. Suffering should be known. The origins or the causes should be abandoned. And so the Buddha has shown us that by abandoning the causes of suffering, karma and afflictions, we can stop the result. So if you stop the cause, karma and afflictions, true origins, if you stop the cause, they cannot produce their result, true suffering. Old age, sickness, death, cycling in samsara again and again, experiencing only, problems and little sprinklings of temporary happiness. So therefore, if we can take these teachings, to heart, to apply them to our own sufferings and how we are the creator, our mind is the creator of our problems, our suffering, our difficulties, and we can stop those causes by developing opposing or counter consciousnesses to overcome all the afflicted consciousnesses. And then we can come to realize that by stopping the cause, it stops it producing its result. And therefore, we can achieve cessation. We can achieve liberation. Liberation is nothing other than stopping the causes of suffering, karma, and afflictions. Okay? So then cessations, true cessations are to be attained. We want to actualize them. We want to be free. So how do we get there? We need true paths. We need to develop, cultivate or practice these true paths. One of them, the main one, is this, non-conceptual realization of emptiness, of inherent existence. But other true paths, like bodhicitta, renunciation, and all of these sorts of things, we'll see are also true paths when they're in the continuum of an Arya being, someone who has seen the truth non-conceptually or perceptually. So the Buddha at around 80 years of age gave the most difficult and profound teaching to, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche recently has taught us, to stop this grasping at permanence, and showed the aspect of impermanence, passing away. All right, so then all this Buddha's life story, why do we need to know this? Apart from it, yes, it's in the DB program, but what is there to learn for us from this life story? See, the Buddha was not always Buddha, okay? The Buddha was just like us many lifetimes ago, but nevertheless exactly like us, having karma and afflictions. The Buddha was not always Buddha. The Buddha was once a sentient being like us and did the work to develop those true paths, true cessations, and overcome true origins, karma and afflictions, which bring true suffering. So we are no different in our capacity to achieve the same results. Right now, it probably just feels like it's so difficult. and insurmountable. But as we progress, you'll see that there is a lot more similarity than difference in our capacity and potential to do this. So maybe also the Buddha was once like us, you know, quite seduced by all the sensory pleasures and delights, and you know, who doesn't like nice things, right? But then for you to be here now shows that you've already made some steps along the way to see how, yes, nice things are wonderful, but they're not a true cause of happiness. The more I indulge in, let's say, dark chocolate and good quality dark chocolate, okay, Lindt at least, right? Or better. And I can take on all those flavors and it's like, delight, and, you know, just give me a moment here. But if I continue to eat them one after the other, I imagine my limit would probably be about 5, maybe 4, and I'd start to feel a little bit sick. Okay, certainly by 6, 7, or 8, I'm probably not wanting to look at Lindt chocolate ever again. So the more I indulge in these sense pleasures, the more I come to recognize that they are not the true cause of my happiness. And if they were, the more I indulged, the greater my happiness would be. And not only for me, but let's say there are some chocolates with some nuts in them, right? And I'm thinking they're the cause of my happiness. The more I have, the happier I get. And it should be like that for every single person. But many of us have nut allergies, right? And it could even kill someone with a nut allergy. So the true cause of happiness cannot be in the chocolate with the nuts, because every person would experience it in the same way if it was a true cause of happiness. So there are many reasons that we can apply as to why these sense pleasures are not what gives us the greater meaning and purpose in life and the heightened, unchanging, forever lasting happiness that doesn't deteriorate to show the aspect of suffering. Okay, so the Buddha, perhaps unlike us, no offense, but has applied tremendous effort over countless lifetimes to accomplish the result. But let us not discount the effort that we have made, because we are here on a Tuesday night for you guys, giving up an hour and a half of your evening. You could be watching Netflix, YouTube, or doing whatever else, going out with friends, but you're prioritizing this. And so it's really important to actually acknowledge that, and not only acknowledge it for yourself, but to acknowledge it for the rest of our Dharma friends gathering here, whether it be now on Zoom or later on YouTube. So really rejoice, delight, and be thinking, you know, how wonderful that I even have an interest in these teachings. How wonderful that I'm seeking purpose and meaning and something greater than just sensory pleasure. You know, how wonderful that I am open to exploring these teachings to see if there's any validity to them, and then checking it out through my practice, and through my practice even coming to actualize what is true. So, excuse me. So as you learned in module 1, that we have Buddha nature. So we have the potential to achieve enlightenment. From an ultimate point of view, the mind lacking inherent existence means that it can be developed and transformed. And Dharma is nothing other than transforming the mind, going from virtue to, you know, other causes of happiness to highest happiness. So we all have this Buddha nature, that's true, even ants and cockroaches and scorpions or these sorts of things. But the thing is, in our precious human rebirth, if we have one, now is the time to develop that Buddha nature. This is the time, right here, right now, in this lifetime. And so we can't rest and just be complacent and think, oh yeah, I got time. You know, when I finish my job, when I retire, when the kids have left home, you know, when the puppy's no longer a puppy, I'll get more time, you know, whatever our excuses are, or I'm just so busy, like the inbox is always just so full. Well, even when we die, the inbox is going to be full, right? So we can't procrastinate and put things off any longer. We have to seize this opportunity, seize this moment to be able to have this intelligence, to be able to check up the teachings, check them out, see if they're actually real or not real. And if they are real, apply them. So we've got this Buddha nature, or this Buddha potential. And so therefore we can become a Buddha in actuality. And as we saw in module 1, that the nature of the mind is pure, fundamentally pure, and the stains, karma and afflictions, all those stains haven't penetrated into the nature of our mind. But like dirty water, we can leave the water to set, just to rest, and you'll see all the dirt and the sediments come to the bottom, or we can purify it to make it drinkable. So we would have looked at a lot of analogies in module 1 about the sky, the vast expanse of the blue sky, and then all the gathering of those intense clouds, darkening obscuring our nature of reality. But as you know, with a wisdom wind, those clouds can be blown away because they haven't penetrated into the nature of our mind. And so because we have this Buddha nature, because the mind is pure by nature, impermanent, changing momentarily, and all those things, endless, it's a stable basis to develop, all of the reasons that you've come up with previously to support your understanding of the nature of mind, we can now apply. Okay? So don't give up. It's really important to keep these things in mind. And when we talk about Buddha nature, we talk about it from two perspectives. The potential to be developed is this stable basis across lifetimes where all that continues. Sure, the body just becomes a corpse, but then all of our, our minds become more subtle, more subtle, more subtle. And then the extremely subtle fundamental mind is what takes us from life to life. And that is what is our stable basis, carrying all the imprints that we can develop, all the qualities we seek, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, and so forth. All those object ascertaining mental factors, that we've put to good use, aspiration and, belief, mindfulness, all of those ones, concentration, wisdom, all of them we can fully develop to realize the teachings. So we talk about it from the potential to be developed, and then we talk about it from the ultimate level, this naturally present potential. And so you can see that what I find beautiful is that the emptiness of a Buddha's mind has no division with the emptiness of my mind. The lack of inherent existence, the lack of independent existence is the same, whether it be for a Buddha's mind or my own mind. Our own mind, it's the same, lack of inherent existence. And this is something very precious for me because it probably shows I'm a bit of a Dharma nerd, actually. So here's my revealing party. But I find it very beautiful and precious because it helps me to grow some confidence that, there is no division between the lack of inherent existence of my mind, the emptiness of my mind, and the Buddha's mind. It's the same. And so therefore that allows me to recognize that I too can become Buddha. Okay? Because of that reason. All right. So that's probably enough for the Buddha's life story. One thing I want to do is as we go throughout the unit, I'd like to show you a particular verse here that you would have come across many times, I'm imagining. So do not commit any unwholesome actions. Engage in perfect, wholesome actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So sadly, it doesn't say subdue others' minds thoroughly. So that means we can't go blaming everyone else as, if only they would stop doing this, then I'd be happy. So it says subdue our own mind. So these teachings we have to apply to our own situation, our own mind, not what somebody else is doing or what they should be doing, but how it's affecting me and my responses. And so as we go through the 3 scopes and the various teachings, I'd like you to hold this quote. So write it down or print screen it, for instance, because I want you to apply your understanding throughout the subsequent weeks and see how this verse, line by line, can be applied to what we're learning each week. So each session, apply this verse. Okay, how is it, for instance, we'll look at the small scope. How does the small scope teach not to commit any unwholesome actions. What does that mean from a small scope perspective? And these words will make sense as we go through, but I just want to introduce the quote for now. How does the small scope practices help me to engage in perfect wholesome actions? What does that mean at that level? How do I subdue my own mind thoroughly? Okay, so applying each of these lines to our journey over the next 6 weeks or however long it is. Does that make sense? And so as we progress, your understanding will become more rich, and you can bring so much more understanding to apply to these individual lines. So that's what I'm hoping we'll be able to see and share. Okay, let me see. Okay, does that make a little bit of sense? Is everyone thinking that's okay for now? Yeah? Okay, let's see. All right. Then in that case, also, where's our precious Isabella? Isabella, can you be our timekeeper as well? Because I have a strong habit of being terribly naughty when it comes to Dharma teachings. I'm usually like, it's the only time I'm on time or early, and often running late as well with them. So I want to make sure I honor your time and not keep you well beyond into the evening, but you can, yeah, get to your other responsibilities. All right, so let's have a look. So we'll do a little bit on Atisha, and then I really would like to get to the links, having a look at the topics of the Lam Rim. That would be what I would hope for. All right, so okay, some of you might have seen this was a tanka often given by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. You might even have it in your center of the Nalanda Masters. And so we're looking here at Lama Atisha. Okay, so that's who we're focusing on. And so Lama Atisha, he was in the 11th century, so an Indian master, and he's actually responsible for restoring the Buddhist teachings in Tibet, those that had fallen, like either fallen away completely, and he's brought them back and restored them. Those that were working well, he's strengthened them. And those where there was just such misunderstanding, then he's reformed them. So in some ways, he's responsible for these three main actions in regard to the teachings in Tibet. We'll look at some more detail. You don't have to write this down. This is a verse that His Holiness wrote in the I forget what it's called, but it's the praise to the Nalanda Masters, something like this. We used to do it in master program as our prayers before classes. So you might have come across it, I'm not sure, on holy days. Sometimes it gets recited. But I just thought if we could just have a look at it. It says, I bow to you, O Master Atisha, who having taught all the profound and vast traditions related to the words of the Buddha within the framework of the path of the persons of the three capacities, were the most kind master disseminating the Buddha's teachings in the land of snows. And so that's His Holiness's verse to Lama Atisha, showing how he took all the profound and vast teachings of the Buddha, all 84,000 of them, and has put them in a workable framework. So that framework addresses the needs of the three capacities of persons. It actually is for even one person to progress in these graduated stages of the path to enlightenment. So Lama Atisha, he reestablished pure teachings in Tibet. They'd fallen into much decay and confusion. People thought that if you practice Tantra, you don't need to practice Sutra. So if you practice Tantra, you don't need to worry about ethics and all of that sort of thing. And, you know, there was many misconceptions about the Buddhist teachings. You either practice only Sutra or only Tantra at the exclusion of the Sutra. And, you know, things can go terribly wrong if you're thinking that Tantra, the highest level of the Buddhist teachings, can be practiced without a very firm, solid foundation in ethics. Independence on ethics we develop with an undisturbed mind. Abiding in ethics, we can develop that concentration single-pointedly. And then independence on that concentrated, powerful, single-pointed mind, then we can develop the wisdom that penetrates reality. So these 3 higher trainings are essential, even just in the middle scope, so therefore in common with the great scope that a bodhisattva would practice, and certainly in common with a tantric practitioner. So Lama Atisha, despite his own life being shortened by about 20 years, as prophesied by Tara, he had direct communication with Tara. He chose to still nevertheless go to Tibet and to do his best to restore those teachings and strengthen them and so forth. So while he was there, he stayed 17 years and he composed Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. So this is the graduated stages of the path to enlightenment. And this text became utterly precious, that even Lamrim Chenmo by Lama Tsongkhapa uses that text. All the Buddhist traditions, whether you're Nyingma, Sakya, or whatever, they all have this presentation of the Lamrim, and they're all in common. And it goes through that graduated path. Now, had the teachings not fallen into ill repair or disrepair or something like this, then Lama Atisha would never have written that text. So when he went to Tibet, he was requested to teach on the basics, things like karma and Lamrim and Lojong. So they weren't asking for the highest level of teachings. And this really impressed Lama Atisha because he could see the sincerity of the practitioners. Well, some of them actually, not all of them, right? But his teachings were able to influence. So the major text, there's the name, Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. So those doing exams and all those sorts of things, you should really make some notes on these sorts of things because it's so important to understanding your framework and having it clear. So often I won't be as explicit as that, but I'll say things like, this is really important. So that's a cue to say, better write this down if I haven't already. All right, so Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment is the root text of all the Lamrim texts. I do recommend this, even though I've not actually read it in full. I'm more of a liberation of the palm of your hand kind of girl. And that one I have read cover to cover at least 3 times, as instructed by Lamas of Rinpoche in Light of the Path, North Carolina, back in 2010. So, but this one I believe would be really awesome. I have started reading it and I just sporadically read it. But this would be totally awesome by one of your own at, where is he? Portland area, right? Matripa College, Yangtze Rinpoche. And so it'd be very, very precious. And it won't pack a hard punch like Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand, which can be a bit confronting for some people because it doesn't hold back. So it depends on which style you like. Lamrim Chenmo is very complicated. I find it's utterly precious, but also it's very, scholarly. So you find what works for you and progress through all of them. So don't think one's better than the other. Just for now, one seems to fit my inclinations, dispositions, insights more readily, and then we can progress like the stages of the path, like that. So some say even Lama Tsongkhapa is the same mental continuum as Lama Atisha. I've heard this said from different people on different occasions. And so that's an interesting, when I first heard that, I was like, what? But then you also read it in this here. So that was interesting. I was like, oh, interesting, maybe it's so. So what else? So yeah, he's condensing the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha into a clear, simple guide for practice. And he's combining sutra and tantra. So to bring them together in one text here called The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. So it's easy to put into practice because it's gradual training. Each training builds off the previous and is a support for the subsequent. And so this was all written in the 11th century when Lama Atisha was in Tibet and is still utterly purposeful, meaningful, and applicable to today. So nothing antiquated about it at all. All right, so yeah, I don't think we really need to go into too much detail about his relationship with Tara, but certainly Tara was very instrumental in his making decisions. And, he did hear 2 Taras at Bodh Gaya at the stupa there say, you know, what is the most important practice for achieving enlightenment? And they were having this discussion, and you know, Lama Atisha, this is all for Lama Atisha's benefit, of course, he, you know, came to realize from their conversation that the most important practice for achieving enlightenment is bodhicitta. And so he took this arduous journey, you know, 13 months on a boat to seek out Lama Salingpa in Indonesia, and stayed 12 years to develop the realizations of bodhicitta and so forth. All right, so that's probably enough for Lama Atisha's story for now. We can, you know, go back and look at some of these things in a bit more detail later, but that'll be okay for now, I think. So Lama Atisha, the three scopes. So he has taught the graduated path to enlightenment, graduated. So quite often His Holiness teases us Westerners, and he says, you know, oh, they want the quickest way, the most complete way, and they want the cheapest way, and, you know, all of these sorts of things, teasing us. And it's not like that. You know, there is no quick fix, and nothing's for free these days. And, you know, we've got to make sure that although we're, you know, sincere and, you know, want to apply the Dharma in the most effective way, it's not going to be the quickest, easiest, cheapest sort of thing out there, right? So it's going to take us a long time. And so if we can have a vast vision, even better, if we can have a vision of, you know, future lifetimes even, because you looked at the continuity of mind in your meditations recently, right? So if you can continue to do that meditation and try to develop some understanding of past and future lives, that'll be certainly helpful. Because what we're talking about in these three scopes is future lives, okay? Now, does that mean, oh, I don't believe in future lives, so therefore I don't need to practice the three scopes? No, not at all. If you want happiness, then you can practice the three scopes if you like, because they will lead to happiness even in this lifetime. But this lifetime is a default because our view is further than that. So if we aim for something further than that, then everything that comes before it will be accomplished. But it's like as a default. So yeah, if you can strengthen your understanding, it'll take, you know, maybe months or years, but strengthen your understanding on past and future lives, and investigate and check up, read books, look at documentaries, all of those sorts of things. It'll just help give a little bit more conviction, you know, to the Buddhist teachings. All right, so let's have a look. Graduated path to enlightenment. So this is where I wanted to sort of at least get to this slide today. So our timing's okay, but I haven't had any questions yet from you guys yet. So maybe that'll come at the end. All right, graduated path, graduated. So not a quick fix, and it's to be habituated. So it's going to take time, gradual, right? Like the steps of a ladder, you know, the rungs. You can't get to the top rung without proceeding over the earlier rungs. You can't just leap from the ground to the top rung. There's this gradual process, and everything that comes before it is a foundation for our development, okay? All right. So one thing to notice, some more homework, is how does each stage increase our happiness? So, you know, the whole you know, idea around the teachings of the Buddha is to overcome all suffering forever and achieve happiness, and not just, you know, a little bit of happiness in this lifetime or future lifetimes or even liberation, but to achieve the highest happiness of enlightenment. So how, a bit of homework to apply as well, how does each of the stages increase our happiness as we proceed? That's something to keep on the back burner at all times. All right, so we have looked at the three preliminary contemplations already. First module, you looked at beginningless mind, nature of mind, and Buddha nature. Yeah. So we saw there that these are preliminaries. This is not yet considered the small scope as such, but they're preliminary to it. So what we saw there with all that mind and its potential was actually trying to understand the nature of mind, how it's pure and so forth. And we saw how we have this Buddha potential, this Buddha nature, and that the stains are not ingrained into the very nature of the mind, therefore can be removed. They're wrong consciousness. They can be countered with a correct consciousness that's built on reasoning and logic, solid foundations, conceptual realizations, inference, and developing this yogic perception and so forth of reality. So we saw the beginningless nature of mind. And what else? What else did we do? We saw the mental factors, didn't we? So developing the virtuous mental factors, overcoming the afflicted mental factors, putting the neutral mental factors like the 5 object ascertaining and so forth, putting them to use to develop the realizations of the path. So you can see how all this has been a preliminary so far. Now, in module 2, how to meditate, we looked at placement meditation and developing that, which is in the nature of concentration. We looked at analytical meditation in the nature of wisdom. Now, developing those, we would achieve calm abiding, special insight, and instead of alternating between them, we would combine them in this union of calm abiding and special insight and go on to develop realizations that are going to penetrate through to the reality, the path of seeing, and a path of meditation up to enlightenment. So all of these modules so far have been gathering all of our resources. So how does beginningless mind, nature of mind, Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it, how does that link to the next preliminary topic of the spiritual mentor? Quite often it's called the guru devotion, right? But we change it to make it more accessible and all of this sort of stuff, which I don't really like so much, because it can diminish things. It's like we have this great resistance to, if we talk about a guru or you got to surrender yourself, or we've got so many misconceptions around it, which is why we change it to be a spiritual mentor. But I feel we shouldn't shy away from the idea of a proper, fully qualified guru. Eventually, we should not be in a hurry at all. We shouldn't race into taking refuge, having vows, these sorts of things where someone automatically becomes your guru, your teacher, your spiritual mentor. But on the other hand, it's good not to have aversion or think it's a surrendering of my own personal control and these sorts of things. So we need a teacher for anything, right? So you want a teacher eventually, if you want to follow these paths to enlightenment, you want a teacher who's realized the nature of their own mind, who's realized their Buddha potential and is putting it into action and developing those positive states of mind, loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, wisdom, realizing reality, these sorts of things. That is someone that you definitely want to learn from. Okay, so how it links from beginningless mind to the spiritual mentor is, remember the Buddha or the guru, if we think of the guru and the Buddha as the same, the guru or the Buddha's mind, the lack of inherent existence of their mind is the same as ours. They have transformed their mind, the potential to be developed, that part of the Buddha nature, they have transformed that to develop all these qualities that we aspire to. And so if we want to develop those qualities in ourselves, we need to learn them, not just from a book, not at all. A book will only get you so far. We want to embody them. So we need to dialogue with our teacher. We need to have teachings directly. We need to ask questions when we have misunderstandings. We need to develop our aspiration, our intention. We need to soften this ego mind that sees myself with pride, right, as being better than anybody else, or I don't need to learn from others. I know how to read, I'm intelligent. We need to soften, chip away, or smooth down that harsh, coarse mind, that ignorant mind, and that prideful mind, arrogant mind, and actually humble ourselves in the presence of someone great who embodies those qualities. And so if we can learn from somebody who has realized the nature of their mind and knows how to therefore train us, then it makes perfect sense that if the qualities we seek, they embody, that we develop a relationship with a spiritual mentor. Okay? So try to keep an open mind on that one if you have a lot of resistance. Your resistance may come from the fact that there are people out there who set themselves up to be spiritual mentors and are not qualified. And absolutely, you should definitely run away from people like that. Absolutely. When we get to the module, I'm sorry I can't do it. I'll be teaching at Copan next year. I think it was in January for you guys, but whenever it is, when you get to the spiritual teacher module, it is utterly, utterly beyond precious, because, you know, if we are open, if our heart is open to have a checklist and check off the qualities of the spiritual teacher and say, yes, this person has this, yes, 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 no, they don't have this, they don't, don't have all of these. Maybe that's not someone I can rely on wholeheartedly. Maybe they're just a friend, a Dharma friend. And then we check someone else, yes, 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 yes. Oh my gosh, wow, amazing. That is someone I can learn from. We can open our heart to that. Then what happens? This rough, coarse mind actually softens. And so we talk about blessings. Blessings is inspiration. We get blessings or inspiration from the guru. It really softens our heart. It opens our mind. When we talk about heart, we're not talking about a physical organ, we're talking about the mind. So it really opens our heart. It opens our mind. It makes us see what's possible. And so that we are then inspired to practice and develop those qualities. So that's probably enough for now. So you don't stop meeting and run away. All right. Next one, precious human rebirth. I believe you should have covered that in a little bit in mindfulness potential, and certainly in how to meditate module. So we might do a little bit in this module, but I'm going to hope that you've done that. Yes, true. Yes, you've done a little bit on precious human rebirth. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool, cool, cool. All right. So how does spiritual mentor link to precious human rebirth? So this precious human rebirth is where our Buddha nature can ripen. And so if we've found a perfect guide, a spiritual mentor to learn from, then they can help energize our practice and inspire us, okay? And so that we can then transform our own mind into virtue and secure a succession of precious human rebirths to continue to develop the stages of the path up to enlightenment. And so that's probably how that links, so we have to do the work ourselves. That's true. The Buddhas can't do it for us. The gurus can't do it for us. In fact, the Buddha said something like, I teach the path to liberation, but know that liberation itself depends on you. So very clearly laid out in sutra. So we have to do the work ourselves. We have to subdue our own mind thoroughly. And how we do that is going to be in dependence on putting the teachings into practice. So having a spiritual mentor can be necessary for that progression. So these three are preliminary contemplations. And so then we get to the small scope, but we can think of it as in a progression, a graduated path to enlightenment for one person. So these stages of the path shared with beings in common with the small scope. So the stages of the path are in common, not only to the small scope, but they're also practiced in the middling scope and in the great scope. They're common. They're something that we all do, regardless of which stage we are on. All right, so when we get to the small scope topics like death and impermanence, lower realms, refuge, and karma, so now we start to recognize that this precious human rebirth is not going to last. We know that all things that are impermanent will die, okay, cease. So we know right now we have breath, but it can be as simple as one last breath in the next moment, and we don't breathe in the next time, and that's it. We meet in the Bardo state, like death is that real that at that Light of the Path retreat, I think it was 2010, that this incident happened. Someone after that retreat, like the day after, died in an accident, like you just don't think death's coming, and it can come at any time, any day, even today. So this precious human rebirth that we have is not going to last forever. And what we have is, we have these misconceptions or delusions. We grasp at that which is impermanent as if it were permanent. And this is how we get ourselves into trouble all the time. You know, we think that everything is permanent. We think that we get married and it's always going to last. The person won't leave us, won't die, or we'll just be separated or divorced. You know, we're utterly convinced that it's forever. We think that our possessions won't break down. You know, everything, our relationships, whatever it is, we grasp at this sense of permanence. We grasp at our teachers. If you have a teacher like Lamas of Rinpoche, you have a teacher, you think he's always going to be here. You know, we grasp at ourselves. Even when you're on your last breath, many people who are in the active process of dying aren't actually sure they're going to die today and that they are actually dying. You know, so this is for all of us, Dharma practitioners and non. So with this precious human rebirth, we don't want to waste our time because like the sands in the hourglass, you know, time is running out. And so when we study death and impermanence, it's inspiring. It's not, you know, superstitious and bad and evil, you know, nasty, let's not go there. It's actually very, very precious because it's going to motivate us. It's going to like let us be inspired to practice and not hold on to grudges or self-limiting beliefs, but to actually take this moment that we have right now to keep our mind in a state of virtue. And the virtue will be the cause of happiness in this life, but also future lives. And so we can secure more precious human rebirths along those ways. So what we need to do is give up attachment to this life, seeking only those sensory pleasures. And we need to turn our mind to the path. And if we're turning our mind to the path, that means we're giving up attachment to this lifetime because we're focused on death and impermanence, and we're wanting to achieve happiness of future lives. So we're focused on death and impermanence, realize that death could come even today, and so we better not waste this lifetime, and I need to make it most meaningful and most beneficial. And at the time of death, only one of two things will happen. We'll either take, from a Buddhist point of view, right? From a Buddhist point of view, we'll either take rebirth in the lower realms, like an animal, for instance, or we will take rebirth in the upper realms as a human, for instance. And so there's only one of two options that can happen. So at the time of death, if we can generate a virtuous state of mind, then that will throw a virtuous karma will ripen to throw us into an upper realm rebirth, like as a human, for instance. And if we generate non-virtue at the time of death, then what's going to happen for us is the lower realms will be actualized, maybe as an animal. And so it can only go one of two ways there. And so with this suffering that happens in the lower realms, I won't shy away from it. Usually I shy away from it, but you know, if you're born as an animal or a hungry ghost or a hell being, you've probably come across those terms before. So whether we're born in the lower realms, we're going to not be able to practice the Dharma like we can now. This would be the most unfortunate. That's why they're called the unfortunate realms, the most unfortunate situation. And so what we want to do with the next stage of refuge is we want to develop a healthy understanding, a healthy, intelligent, they call it fear, right? But it's a healthy fear, an intelligent fear, a useful fear. It's like not wanting something, right? So what do we not want? What do we fear? What do we not want? We don't want to be born in the lower realms. So with a sense of healthy fear of not wanting that, we decide to seek protection in Buddha Dharma Sangha. We take refuge or protection. Buddha Dharma Sangha, the main refuge there is the Dharma, the teachings taught by the Buddha, which exist in the continuum of the Sangha, the Arya beings, the Arya Sangha. So the Dharma is the actual refuge. The Dharma is what's going to transform my mind. The Dharma is what's going to bring about the virtue that we seek, the causes of happiness. And so with a healthy fear of taking rebirth in the lower realms at the time of death. Why? Because we've accumulated so much negative karma. We've engaged in so many wrongful actions that harmed others and harmed ourselves. And we continually had these afflictions arise of, desire, aversion, so much ignorance, pride, arrogance, jealousy, and all the rest. And so we know we've got a lot of negative karma there, and we know death will come before we've had a chance to purify it all. And so in that sense, we develop this healthy, useful, not wanting to be born in the lower realms. And we trust in the teachings of the Buddha, as taught by the Buddha, as embodied by the Arya Sangha. And we want to put that Dharma into practice to actualize the cause of happiness for ourselves. And so we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And then lastly, just before I go to the chat, karma, the teachings on karma. So this is where we follow the advice of the teachings, put it into practice. This is how we get the actual protection we seek. Okay, so this is how Dharma is modifying our behavior according to the law of cause and effect, causality, karma and afflictions. And so this is how I said karma and afflictions. I meant to say karma, actions and results, law of causality, cause and effect, or actions, karma, actions and results. This is how we modify our behavior in line with causality. Okay, and we transform our mind, developing positive states of mind, virtuous actions, and then creating the causes of happiness. So that's quite full on. I'm so sorry. There's quite a lot in this module, and we don't have that much time, and an hour and a half is so fleeting. So that's how we proceed. So see if you can try to bring to understanding this answer over the next week, as well as that verse that I gave you about, subdue your own mind thoroughly and all that. So how would you apply each of those lines to that lower scope, including the 3 preliminary practices, to see how we, counter all the non-virtue and develop virtue and subdue our mind thoroughly and so forth. Using fear as a positive motivation to commit to the path, perhaps. Yeah, but fear in a healthy way, not fear as in, frightened or scared or anything like that, but just like, hey, I don't want that. I don't want that to happen to me. So I better do something different. That's all. It's a term that triggers people, but there's no need for it to be a triggering from a Buddhist perspective. So yeah, like that. All right. So are there any questions that we can do before we do the dedications? I'm sorry once again, because I've talked so much, but what to do? We have so much to do to get through. If we had 2 hour sessions, it'd be better. Are there any important questions? Hello, where are you? I can't see your face. Joe, good. I just want to go to a different view so I can see you better. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I see hands here. I just jump into the conversation. This when you told us to like to cultivate in the position of the first scope. I mean, everything that I had it in my phone, so I can come back to it. But we need to if it's a basement for a foundation for our practice, the lower scope.
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
Does it the same thing that if like Buddha said that not everybody will understand my teaching, so I will give them the lower one to have everybody, like he gave it to every person that
Sure.
he
Yeah.
saw, and then you can like leave it somehow and go upper and upper if you are lucky enough to understand. Is it the purpose of doing that?
The purpose would certainly be to reach the certain people who could only be taught according to the lower scope of like karma, right? So don't engage in non-virtuous actions, engage in virtuous actions. This will be the cause of happiness for you, right? So that might be all someone can receive. And that in itself would be an amazing teaching to help them develop virtuous actions and stop killing and stealing and lying and all the rest, sexual misconduct, whatever, right?
Yes.
So that's true that those teachings could be for just those disciples at that level, and will, that's all that they will be ready for now. That is true.
Yeah.
but also from a, final point of view, the Prasangika or middle way consequence point of view, all sentient beings will achieve Buddhahood. So all sentient beings will have to transform their mind into all of those gradual stages of the path up to enlightenment, developing all those qualities. And so that, in that sense, for one person to achieve enlightenment, necessarily they have to go through all of those stages. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think I get it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Camille?
Hi, I know
Can you put
we're
on your
almost out of
video?
time. So this is,
I know.
can
Put on
you
your
hear
video,
me?
darling. I can, but I can't see you. I want to see your face.
I
Just put on your
should
video.
be on.
Okay,
You
I'll go
might
into
have to
gallery.
scroll through, but
I'm in gallery. Where are you? Wave, where are you?
oh, you can't.
Oh, there you
You
are.
can
Gotcha.
maybe only.
Okay,
There I am. You can only see me from here now.
gotcha. Thank you.
So this might be a question moving forward and maybe one that we will cover over time. This is my third round in discovering Buddhism, and I always find something amazing around it. And as I started to reread and kind of get myself ready, and I'm also a liberation in the palm person that I
Good.
find that really approachable.
Yeah.
But right away, as I start to read, it often starts with the hell realms.
Yeah.
And I definitely understand from an academic perspective about how that can provide a healthy fear. On the other hand, I have learning history, perhaps from this lifetime, perhaps from many, many prior, but I run into what I assume is somewhat of a cultural and perhaps a karmic barrier with immediately feeling aversion to the hell realms being this kind of forcing into conformity
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
should be afraid. And there's a history of that through religions. So my
Exactly.
question is that in my daily sitting, and that comes up every time that comes up in my long
Yeah.
room cycle and meditations, I feel the resistance. And I'm
Sure.
wondering, is it better to I just try to acknowledge that there is resistance to hearing it and that I don't have
Good.
to understand it, that the Dalai Lama
Yeah.
says, and the Buddha always said, if it doesn't feel right, it's okay to not
Yeah.
just say, oh, give me all of that. But I'm wondering also, because I feel like I am also stuck there. I'm not
Yeah.
making progress there. So is it
Yeah.
better to skip over it, or should I just
No.
continue to
So
do it in order and acknowledge it?
yeah. So can I stop you there just because of our time is so poor? And can I answer for you quickly now? Is that okay,
Mhm.
Camille? So what I would suggest is do what you're doing, acknowledge that you're triggered by it, right? And it's probably coming from, fear associated with, you must believe this and do this, or, maybe it's Christianity or something like that. There can be elements of fear introduced, right? So acknowledge your trigger, okay? Acknowledge where it's coming from. But then also what helped me was there's this beautiful thing, I think it was in Dharmakirti, one of the Nalanda Masters, one of the teachings on Pramanavartika, valid cognition. And he says something along the lines of, because the Buddha was true with the primary teaching, whatever is secondary can be accepted. I haven't done it justice, but the essence is that. So the primary teaching of the Buddha is the Four Noble Truths. And beings have achieved those realizations and attained liberation and enlightenment. So if the main teaching of the Buddha is the Four Noble Truths and they are valid, then whatever is secondary and quite trivial by comparison, right, like the lower realms, then you can just accept that as it is. Now, because he didn't lie about the main teaching, why would he lie about the lower realms? But even if that doesn't help, just look at the animal realm alone. Some dogs are skinned alive in China because it makes the skin more, you know, supple and these sorts of things. Some are, you know, a dog could be living out a Prada handbag in New York City or something like this, right? Just so many variations between just the animal realm and just a dog, for instance. But failing all of that, look at just the human realm. And some of us are so driven by, let's say, sex addiction or, you know, these sorts of, you know, behaviors. And that could be indicative of like an animal realm existence, or maybe like, you know, major drug addicts that are just craving and you know, like a hungry ghost realm, or someone who's going through, you know, very difficult psychotic episode right now, which would be like a hellish state of existence. So just apply the 6 realms to the human realm. And someone who's living in this lavish life of opulence, like a god realm or something like this. There are people who have jealousy of the people like that, a demigod realm, you know? So try to just apply in some of those ways. Perhaps it might be helpful, Camille. I hope I'm saying your name right. But that would be, yeah, so there are definitely, no doubt, hell realms on earth. We see them every time we turn on CNN and all of these other things, Al Jazeera or whatever it's called, you know, those. So yeah. All right. So thank you so much for your question. And I don't mind going a bit late. I know some people probably do, but we do have to wrap up and just do some dedication. Do we have time, Isabella, for Joe's question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say we do have
Oh,
time
cool.
for one more question, and then we can do
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. I just want to say that my comment isn't as profound as the contributions from Lodran and Camille. I wanted to say how lovely it is for me that you shared all the way through that you talk a lot or you talk too much, because I have that problem too.
Right.
So thank you. And in case I don't have time at the end, I'll do my usual and say thank you to Isabella and thank you, Bay.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I get a little bit passionate because I want to help and, you know, serve you and give you as much as I can. But also, yeah, we don't have the leisure of time, sadly. So, all right, well, let's go straight into and Ludden, is that how you say your name? Ludden? Is that how you say your name?
It's Ladan. Ladan.
Ladan?
Ladan.
Ladan?
Yes, Ladan.
Thank you. I'm finding it wonderful that you're on your 3rd round through, and I think that's really excellent. I know I've got about 6 that are doing DB for the 3rd time with me as well, and they're continually learning new things. And also I present it differently each time as well, but this is a wonderful thing that you're doing. And so well done to you. And I heard you were reading before class and these sorts of things. So this is most excellent.
Sorry,
so
I think
much. Oh, did you take the credit for somebody else?
yeah, it's Camille. Camille has 3. I'm
Camille.
my like 2 or sometimes the first. For your
Right,
case,
right,
it's the first one. Yeah.
right. So
Thank
I
you, Camille.
transferred. No, I was saying that to inspire you to be like her, perhaps. All right. Thank you. So dedication and merit, how amazing, how fortunate, supremely fortunate we are to spend this time together and try to, you know, hear the Buddha's teachings, that they're still alive and existing in this world is amazing, and in a pure state still. So we're so fortunate. So we can dedicate this merit to the enlightenment of all living beings. Feel free to join in if you like. May the precious supreme bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. May the precious view of emptiness not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. And then we'll go straight to His Holiness's long life. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And just because we're short on time, we'll do the 2nd verse here only for the swift return of Kabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. Okay, so thank you, everyone. So rejoice, how wonderful. It's our first session. And based on that, perhaps we'll see each other again next week. So do take
Thank
excellent
you.
care. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Venerable.
Pema.
And Isabella.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you, Venerable.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.